Great.
Okay, so I'm going to go as if. Rachel, do as you see fit here.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're gonna do it, and I'm gonna make a little introduction. So anyway, I want to talk about my favorite poem, "If," by Rudyard Kipling.
Mm-hmm.
And you like the poem yourself.
I love this poem. I've read this poem independently of you, but you and I have talked about this poem over the years, and every time I get it, I kind of get teared up when I read it. So you'll have to read it.
So you're going to record this for your own.
Yeah.
Tell them a little bit about what you do.
Oh, sure. So I have a podcast, Pittsburgh Pat Podcast, and I interview people. I guess if there's one general theme, it's about creativity and where does creativity come from? What is the process that you use if you're creating something? And I'm just trying to investigate, like what we were talking about earlier about where do dreams come from. I'm trying to find out where inspiration comes from and see it from different artists, actors, writers, but just regular old people who may or may not be involved in an artistic discipline. Where do their creative ideas come from? So
It's called PittsburghPat.com.
yes, you can reach it.
Look it up. Okay. Anyway, this amazes me because somehow I have to say it's a masculine viewpoint.
Yes.
It has.
Well, it's a man talking to his
Definitely
son, right?
It has testosterone behind it. Exactly.
He's giving advice to his son. It's like Polonius giving Laertes advice, right?
I know.
You know,
To thy own self be true.
Exactly.
And for thou can't be false to any man.
Neither a borrower nor a lender.
And they're right after each other, one after the other. He's like, I think
it's good advice.
Shakespeare had all these things he wanted to get out, so he sticks them into this soliloquy, and he puts them all in order of these different things.
He may have given this advice to his own son.
Exactly. Well, I'm not sure what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let me just read this.
Sure.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, and make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good or talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it all on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and sinew, nerve and sinew, to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, who can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. There should be whole courses on this in universities, the philosophy of this, the contrapositioning of every phrase.
I'm glad you said philosophy, because there is a lot of philosophy in here. As you were reading that, I was thinking to myself, this is Seneca. I'm trying to pick the right phrase here. Oh, when it talks about, actually it's Marcus Aurelius, when he talks about being hated, but don't give way to hate people. Oh, there it is. If you can, or being lied about, but don't deal in lies. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of the entire Roman Empire at one point, at one of its largest extents. And, he wrote the meditations to himself as advice, as like a journal kind of. It was never meant to be read by anyone. And yet somehow a copy survived, and we found it, and it's been translated into who knows how many languages. But he says, like, you're going to go out in the world, there are going to be people who are trying to use you, hate you, they're going to try to twist your words. He says, you have to realize that they are sick, they have their own agenda, you have to rise above that, Now, he was in a unique position as emperor. Of course, he was going to see courtiers, there were going to be people that are going to make requests from him on a kingly basis. But the same is true for just about anybody who goes out into public, somebody's going to demand something from you, whether it's a moment of your time or whether it's monetary or whatever it happens to be. And, I think what I find interesting is being prepared for that, actually like taking a moment or two in the morning and just saying like, okay, I'm relaxed, I'm calm, I'm going to be cordial, I'm going to be, I'm sure that there are going to be moments in this day which may frustrate me or, I may become agitated, but I'm going to pause, I'm going to try to be temperate, I'm going to reflect and do the best that I can to deal with each of those situations. Having that meditation ahead of time has been instrumental for me to like improve my dealings with other human beings.
No, exactly.
But that's right here.
It's fascinating. And one of the things that I identify with, I'm in finance and have been for 40 some years, and risk all your, risk everything on one turn of pitch and toss. I've done it several times and lost, and had to build up from scratch. Back in 1980, I basically had nothing after losing a major business venture, but I learned from the experience.
But to your credit, you did it, and I think that's
did not go bankrupt.
That's what he's but you lost amounts of money that other people would maybe not be able to mentally recover from. There was I think it was 2008 crisis, the 2008 financial crisis. I remember reading about, I can't remember his name. It was a German financier, and I think he at one point he may have been the most wealthy man in Germany, and he had about $8 billion, I think he was valued at one time. Well, there was the banks, right, they stopped loaning money, and for whatever reason he was caught in that crisis. Like he was caught in between a position where he either couldn't cover something, or it was, he needed the loan and the banks just weren't giving loans at that particular point in time. And he stepped in front of a train. Like he was so distraught that he was that he went from his value went from 8 billion to 1 billion. And the saddest part of it is the loans came through a month later, right? But he ended his own life. And and it's over what, somebody may objectively sit there and say, well, he still had $1 billion, what did he have to worry about? But some people
live
can't,
in quiet desperation.
But some people can't deal with that sense of loss, right? That loss.
Well, back when I was, but this is how I learned everything.
Yeah.
I learned it all the hard way, because that's the only good way.
$1 million mistake.
And they say you want someone who has failed and come back from it. That's the person who really understands. Yes. And the best route is not being afraid of failure. Those who are so cautious never really get anywhere. Right now we're talking about stuff. I'm throwing out ideas that people could just cancel me. You start talking spiritual, you're out of here. And that whole world. So that it's a natural response. I don't believe in that stuff. So let's just forget.
Especially when we're talking in scientific stuff.
Yeah, we're scientists. We don't believe in that kind of crap. Well, when you get into quantum mechanics, it gets a little easier to understand that you can bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
Because that you get some pretty strange ideas.
Some really
physicists are going to have a big hard time with this, and that's all right. They'll come around because it's right, and you have to. And
well, is it testable and repeatable? And that's what science. And once you find that, once they find experiments that will be able to test and repeat, you can repeatably test these things reliably. Then that's a certain level of definition of science. But, you know, I've been to California, so I can say I believe in California. I've never been to Arizona. I still believe Arizona is there, right? I don't need to have the direct physical experience of Arizona to know that Arizona exists, right?
Exactly.
So it's possible to believe in things beyond what your experience is, you know, and I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption. We do it all the time.
If you look at this, you say, if you can keep your head when all those about you are losing theirs, people have said that.
Well, that's funny, that's right there.
But the key is in blaming it on you. And then if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but but make allowance for their doubting too. So in other words, you understand human nature.
Yes.
People are, this is a huge understanding, but there's all the contrapositions here. Every phrase, stanza in here has the opposing side of it. And that's what life really is about. And the thing is, if you don't see, you end up being able to detach yourselves from the details of what's going on. That's what they're doing in this.
Yes. Well, that's Epictetus. Okay, so when you're talking about that, you're talking about people telling lies about you and you or doubting you. He says something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, if men tell lies about you, evaluate what they're saying. If there's truth in it, address it, change it. If there is no truth in it, laugh about it, right?
Exactly.
So, that's a very stoic philosophy. I really like this.
I mean, I love, the idea of being able to talk to anyone. You can talk to crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. It's all contra. But that's, the thing is, there's a high side to each of those sides. They seem to be contra, but in the end, they're both the wise position to take on both sides of it.
Absolutely, I think, and that's the thing. Like as well as I, we used to, we know each other from a certain establishment that I used to work at, and I can't tell you how many celebrities I would get on. I just talked to them like they were human beings. After a while, they realized that I didn't want anything from them, and I was just, talking to them like a normal patron, and they talked to me the same, almost 90% of the time. And I understand celebrity comes with its own burdens, and so there's always hangers-on and people that want something from you if you're famous. But once I think I was able to put someone at ease, and they realized that that's not what you're going to get here. We had a nice clientele. We had a clientele that wouldn't bother celebrities, and they felt like they could come in here. We had actors, we had athletes, we had newscasters, and once you were there, we were all together. You talked to most of those people.
Well, I was very shy when I was young, but over time, being in sales for 50 years, but I've developed a certain amount of, I'd say arrogance, but probably a little bit. I mean, I'm right, arrogant here, saying it's the biggest theory ever written. How arrogant can you get? I mean, that hubris is crazy. But the thing is, on the other side of the coin, I love talking to a waiter or waitress or whatever, or someone at McDonald's. I go to McDonald's and I meet these people and I want to keep talking, but I'm in the takeout line, so I can't stay very long. And I find a young black guy who's just going through high school, and you look at the guy and said, you'd hire this guy in a second. Absolutely. Just because his countenance or what he shows is this brightness and kindness, and just, some people just can show it in their face. It's amazing how quickly you can sum up people. It's pretty easy. But my favorite line in this is this: if you can meet with, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters, I love it, just the same. To me, it's all an illusion. Triumph is an illusion. Disaster is an illusion. The problem is, you talk about man walking in front of the terrain. The thing is, it's still an illusion. You get past it. It's people so sad when people commit suicide. Or I had a friend, one of my best friends ever, and the guy was the most outgoing guy, and he ends up jumping off a bridge, and he was, guess he had some finance issues, but no one even knew because he was so outgoing. You know, it's amazing. I worry about people that are really outgoing, and it's you worry about those people. The feedback. You don't know what the other side of their position is.
I think it's, you know, we talk about frame of reference when we talk about physics, but it's also useful to have that, for me, to have that attitude in my own life too. Something happens, right? It may be judged as by somebody else as bad, but it's really up to me to determine whether it's good or bad. And I've taken, the older I get, the more I take an I don't know yet kind of attitude. There's a famous story, you've probably heard it, of the farmer whose horse runs away, right? And his neighbor says, "Oh, your horse ran away, that's absolutely terrible." And he says, "I don't know, maybe." And then the next day the horse comes back with another horse, a wild horse. And so he has two horses. So the neighbor says, "Wow, that's great, you have two horses now." And maybe. And then his son, the farmer's son, tries to break the horse, the wild horse, but he gets thrown and he breaks his leg. And the neighbor says, "Oh no, your son broke his leg, that's terrible." And he says, "Well, I don't know, maybe." And then the next day, the army comes through and they're recruiting all of the able-bodied, young men, and he can't go because his leg's broken. So, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know yet. You don't.
That's a great story.
Know yet. It's an old story, but it's useful.
It's a great story.
It's useful because I don't know. I don't have that perspective. Although sometimes I use that too. There's a meditation I do sometimes. It's called bird's eye view, and you just sit and try to imagine that you're 30 feet in the air or 100 feet in the air, and you're a bird, and you're just watching whatever you as a human being happen to be doing at that moment. You're working, or you're having an argument, or you're driving, or you're eating, and you just, like, it gives you a perspective, like, what does this look like to a bird? Does it make any sense? Does it have any meaning? Is it that important? It helps you. Yes, there are things that I do that are important, but there are also plenty of things that I think are more important than they actually are, and so it helps me to not take myself too seriously sometimes.
It does help. And then, when I was 26, I was just getting into the brokerage business, and I ended up being, everybody there, was going through the pressures of the studies and so forth, and I have one of those things, or test, where every time you erase, what you do is you erase the answer. If you got it wrong, you got it wrong right then. Well, the thing is, you erase and you find immediately as you go. So otherwise, you take a whole test, you find out at the end whether you got it right or wrong.
Oh.
Different, you went through the pressure every time you erase something.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that for whatever reason, my dad had just died, and I was 26 when he passed away, and he had a heart attack and died quickly. But anyway, the experience was they asked everybody to give blood. And my blood pressure was too high. They wouldn't take my blood at age 26. So it became a concern. And I said, very big concern. So I said, then I had recently read Siddhartha, which is by Hermann Hesse. And basically it's the story, I guess, about the Buddha. I never realized it was about the Buddha. It was just the story about Siddhartha. And so anyway, read the book, and I said, he went through this whole life trying to achieve the perfect the perfect, everything he did, he never got there. Then he eventually gave up on his discipline. So most disciplined person in India at the time, I guess, at that point. But then he gave up, and he went into the town and ended up becoming a finance person. And he was very good at first because he was so disciplined, and then later he got overweight and had a woman or whatever. But eventually he was despaired. He went to destroy his life. He went to jump into a river, and there was a ferryman there who ended up somehow kept him from jumping in the river or whatever. And he rode the ferry with them for a while. Then the old man dies, and he takes over the ferry, and he ends up finding his whole peace and solace kind of after everything was said and done. I mean, just happened. And I've learned that what happens in life's experiences is we are presented with challenges, emotional challenges. I've had a number of them. And when you get in a major emotional challenge, usually they're insurmountable. There's no way out. You can go right or left, there's no way out. See, it's like you have this barrier on both sides of you, and you can't get out either way. What happens is you just go back and forth, trying to resolve it. Well, eventually what happens is the barriers kind of start coming down without you noticing it, because you get distracted or you get bored with the idea. You get bored with the fight that you're making back and forth. Well, eventually the sides get down and they're no longer there, and you don't even think about it because you just went on. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, how spiritual learning comes. I think you learn a lot through those kinds of unusual processes. And this is what this does. Mm-hmm. You can just go through this
line by line,
yeah, over and over again,
yeah,
or pretty much anything.
And the rhyming is good. I really like. I mean, it's a well structured poem too. But the philosophy that's in it, I absolutely love.
My favorite piece of music is "My Way." It's sung by Frank Sinatra, even though he didn't write it.
Yeah. But he always picked great songs to sing, and he always had a great band behind him.
Oh,
the music.
My Way. I want that at my funeral. I want My Way played at my funeral.
Oh, okay.
Because this is done my way. I mean, the thing is, one of the things about this physics, no one has listened to me. Yeah. I've had no followers in the physics. Mm-hmm. All these years, no one. I sent these books to a bunch of physicists. I never got a word. The thing is, why? Why is no one? We got the 252 formulas in there. Someone said they're either right or wrong. And they're all right, spot on with whatever's measured. So I don't know why they didn't. But the point is, so glad we mentioned this good thing. I would have been one of their proteges had someone grabbed onto it. Wasn't supposed to. This has been blocked. That's how strong the spiritual community is.
I was thinking also when we were talking earlier, and you said something about that, I was thinking even if the entire scientific community agreed and endorsed and tried to get the word out about this, it still wouldn't be as effective as what you're doing right now, going to the people. You're going to be able to reach so many more people. And it'll be there when people are ready to meet it, okay?
Exactly.
Because we may be recording something right now, and like one of the students I taught last week at summer camp, who's 9 years old or 11 years old, they're not ready for these concepts. But this recording or this book or your lectures will be around in some form for them to access when their brain and their experience is enough that they'll be able to understand it, you know. And that's the thing that I think is valuable, really valuable, is that, you know, who knows when the time, you know, who knows who's going to run with this and in which direction.
Well, it's
like Kipling, we're reading Kipling, and he's been dead for 130 years. So, you know, or maybe longer. And yeah, he's imparted so much information to us right there.
The thing is, this has been blocked and shut down and closed. But nothing is more powerful. This didn't come from me, it came from a guy named Wayne Dyer. Nothing's more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, Wayne is great.
And the idea of his time has come. Now the thing is, the time hadn't come. The digital universe makes it so it's coming. I think this is it. I think it's going to happen. But I don't know. It's been very, very discouraging because, you know, all this time, no one says, no one agrees. But I finally got to the point where I know it's right. I don't need someone else to tell me it's right. It's just a matter of didn't get any accolades. I mean, okay, didn't get any accolades. Actually, keeps you humble. Humble is part of what the if is about. It's been it's been a great experience. What a blessed experience.
Well, humble is important. I was telling the kids, like I said, for reference, last week I taught a summer camp, and I taught these 3 kids how to play Dungeons and Dragons. So they create characters. You have character traits. And I said, that's fine. But if all of your character traits are superhuman, right? If you're Superman and you're invincible, that's fun for a very short period of time. But then it becomes boring, right? I said, it's always interesting to make one of your character traits, or maybe two, or just write a character flaw into your character. And then that's interesting. Because what'll happen is you'll tell the stories about the time when you beat the dragon. But you'll also have these other stories where you tripped over your own feet when you were walking into the tavern, and then that will become a story. And those are interesting stories because we're humans and we are fallible, so people will relate to that, right? If you wanted everything all the time, life would be boring, right? But when you have to work at it, and then eventually through trial and error, or setbacks, or what you feel are emotional setbacks, then the triumph is greater because
Triumph and disaster.
you've experienced the disaster and now you're triumphant. I mean,
Well, that's why
that makes it so much better.
failure gives you respect for what you've done.
Sure.
I mean, you feel sorry for some of these people that are famous because they're either gorgeous or they're or just great actors or what, or just brilliant, and all of a sudden they don't have the counter force at all that develops the character.
Mm-hmm.
And
You mean famous young?
yeah, young people. You know, how many people go to alcohol and drugs and divorces and so forth. But like, you know, the thing is, I just said I'm humbled by this experience of not going anywhere for a very long time. I knew stuff that I've known since 2001 that Einstein didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't a lot, but at that point, now it's a lot. But at that point, it was a very small one issue. But the thing is, but at the same time, so I'm arrogant because I know I'm right because the material's right. But at the same time, I'm humble because I've never gone anywhere for all these years. And, you know, I can't, you know, I don't know. It's been that contrast. It's that contrast. And that contrast develops, I think, a greater vantage point than any kind of singular vantage point.
Yes, yes. And the other thing, when you were talking about different, like triumph and disaster and the emotional struggles, I think that to me, the older I've gotten and the more of those types of situations I've found myself in, I've come to realize how ephemeral emotion is, right? So like emotions like the weather in Pittsburgh, right? It changes so often that like if I wait long enough, like you said you'll get bored with it. But I think it's just transient. So I don't know. And as much as I don't know where my dreams come from, I don't know where my emotions come from either. They just come. And a lot of them are attached to my physical body. So it's like, well, you haven't eaten in a while, or boy, you really need a nap, or you know, it's you know, and it's that sort of thing. So often, if I just wait, I find that that's the solution. The solution is that it's a test. It's a patience test. It's an endurance test, or it's just not the right time yet. So if I'm working, I have a board. I use a very physical representation, but I have a board that I put pins and index cards in, and I always have several ideas, creative projects going at one time, because I've found that I will not make advances overarching. I may make overarching advancements in one area for a period of time, but then that will slow down. And then when that slows down, and for whatever reason, I either need to talk to a certain individual, or I need an institution to reply to me, or I need some materials or something, I can do another thing. I can let that sit, and then I can do another thing. But it's wonderful when it comes to you, like it's coming to you now, with all the ideas that you're getting, because there's nothing in the universe like that.
Well, the triumph disaster go back and forth and back and forth. And again, it's just like the barriers come down. When you start to not see them as either triumph or disaster, which
Right.
is what you're saying, and you see the middle line, they're just experience. And that's what they're really talking about here. You go this or that, but then there's just experience. Experience is like what do they call the razor edge? Is a Buddhist term or whatever, kind of walking the razor edge between positive and negative, and it's just experience. And it's interesting. What you think about all the emotions. What's the opposite of love?
Apathy.
Yes. Most people think the opposite would be hate.
No.
It's absolutely indifference or apathy.
There's this really old movie.
It's an excellent good answer.
There's an old movie with Kirk Douglas in it called The Vikings. It's from like the 1960s, and it's not very well known. But in one of those, the soothsayer of the village in Norway or wherever they are, she says, "Love and hate are two horns on the same goat." And I always remember that line. It's kind of silly, but it reminds.
Triumphs and disaster treat the two postures just the same.
Exactly. It
Same
reminds
thing.
me. It's an aspect of the same thing. It's high emotion. And the thing is, I have a saying, a kind of a mantra. If you brought up Buddhism or Hinduism, I have sort of a mantra that I repeat to myself, and it's I would rather be spiritually guided than emotionally driven. So I try to distinguish between those two things. So when I want something and it's my desire, that's fine. That can be an impetus to do things creatively, but I have to be aware to be guarded against tripping myself up over my own emotional state, right? And like you said, we were talking about spirituality before, but in the universe, if the universe has a plan, maybe what I'm working on right now, I'm trying to exert my will on. It's not the right time for that, so I can wait.
Well, I think one of the greatest songs the Stones ever wrote was you can't always get what you want. If you try sometime, you might find you get what you need.
Right.
And that, I love it. It just, to me, I love the Stones.
Yeah, I mean, they're very,
just amazing.
so many great songs.
But that one is, I even like Sympathy for the Devil. It's kind of like Sympathy for the Devil. It's like, okay, again, it's the contrast.
Sure.
Have sympathy for the devil. It's like, and I don't know. And even, the bad experiences that we go through in humanity has horrible experiences. They have some brutal,
Collectively.
humanity's, what they do to humanity to other humanity is still going on today big time. We're hoping that will change, but it will change. It's there for a reason. The contrast is supposed to be there. And I think the goal is to get to the point where you have experience gets you beyond to the next level. It's always at a level advance. You advance as a human by levels. And I think it's one of the things we're doing.
Yeah, it's another. I mean, I'm big into the ancient philosophers, the Stoics, and they talk about this. That, like, when you're given what's seemingly a burden or a trial, it's more about how you handle it, than actually, like
Win or lose.
Yeah, it's just about how does it actually happen? And that's a great example. Like, how many, everybody says, oh, Babe Ruth, one of the best baseball players who ever lived. How many times did he strike out?
Not a lot.
Like a lot. Like a real lot.
Strikeout king, too. The home run king and strikeout king.
You swing for the fence.
Every time.
Sometimes you're going to strike out, right? So, you play it safe and you try to hit singles. That's a different kind of game.
He was a heck of a pitcher.
But that's what Kipling's talking about here. He was. People don't think about that. He could do it all. He played it all. He played every spot on the diamond. That was a different time. That was different baseball. We've become specialists now. Yeah. But yeah. Well, this is great.
Well, I think this might be a good way to stop. But the thing is, I think that life's complex, and physics actually has to expand to include that complexity of experience. And the idea of a soul, that's going to be something that people are going to have a lot, we think a lot of you are going to have a hard time with that. And it's understood. I mean, it's not an easy thing to, easy breach. Most people, how many scientists have given up on religion? This is not religion. This is science.
Right.
If it's not
You're
science,
talking about physics.
if the science, the religion of today is science. I mean, let's face it, that's what the religion is. They say, well, doesn't make any of the other, there are aspects of all the religions, some great philosophy. But the problem is too much of religion has been destined to try to create power for the people who are the expounders of that religion. So it becomes, they look at, the Crusades or the Inquisition, or pretty much every religion has done harm to others in name of the religion. But I mean, even Nazism is a religion, and communism is a religion, and so forth. So the thing is, the idea is, the real way to look at it is stay open. stay open to all this. And we're asking for a lot of openness when it comes to the idea of spirituality. But the thing is, don't buy into anything until it feels right to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Make it, do not accept anything we're
This
saying.
isn't, we're
Don't
not,
accept anything we're saying
Yeah.
here unless it hits some kind of chord. If it's gonna hit the chord,
well, you're not presenting this in a dogmatic way. It's not like you're trying to
no.
get a bunch of acolytes or something like
Yeah,
that.
this is,
This is just, you're imparting information as you see it. And then it's up to somebody else whether they want to decide what to do with it.
I'm certain it's right. Well, maybe I'm certain it's right to me, but I think eventually others are gonna find it's correct, because it's not limiting. It's not a closed-end view. It's a completely open-end view. But anyway, we thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
And we always have an enjoyable time.
Absolutely,
Thank you, Patrick.
it's fantastic.
Okay, Rachel, we probably are done now.
We're up. Good stuff. I love the if poem.
It worked, didn't it?
It did. You tied that in perfectly.